Okay, hi folks. In this short video today we're going to give you some tips on presentation skills and how to perform presentations. So the first question you'll probably be asking yourself is, why do we need to present? Well, for the faculty challenge you don't have to present, your group has to present, so you can choose one person in your group, or you can present wholly as a group. You can make your own choice as to how you want to do it. Remember, you're working as a team, so playing to the skills of team members is a perfectly valid way of doing this. However, over the course of your university time, you will inevitably need to do some presentations, and over the course of your career as a health professional, you'll certainly need to develop your presentation skills. First and foremost, this will be for assessments as you go through university, but as you move on, you'll really want to be able to reduce sometimes your often complex research or some complex concepts that you've been working on to a kind of 10-minute presentation where you are giving a talk in lay terms to make sure that people can understand what you're doing and what you're up to. This is a really important skill, likely to impact on whatever career path you've chosen. So today we're going to look at some tips for presenting. We will look at quickly just sort of some of the slideshow types things that you can get, so PowerPoint and the various spin-offs of PowerPoint. Other presentation tools are available, and we'll also talk about another one called Prezi just quickly, because that's got some specific strengths and weaknesses for those of you who know Prezi. One of the other main things we'll go through is thinking about how you develop your message and what is your message. And then we'll also have some top tips at the end for talking to groups. So, slideshows, we're going to look at PowerPoint and an equivalent and think of some of the common mistakes, and then develop some rules of thumb, looking at how many slides you might want to produce, and also talking a little bit about joke slides. So the first warning to recognise with PowerPoint is this quote here from Dilbert. PowerPoint slides are like children. No matter how ugly they are, you'll think they're beautiful if they're yours. So remember that you are not very objective when you're looking at your PowerPoint slides. And to get round this, it's often a good idea to get a good friend, somebody who can tell you like it really is, whether your slides are okay or whether they're a load of rubbish. Okay, one of the most common mistakes that you'll come across is people using too much text in slides. Remember, your slides are supposed to augment your message, not be the whole message. There are a lot of different reasons why people often use too much text. The most common is that you're worried you're going to forget to say something really, really important, so you want to put all the text into your slides to remind you. And this can lead to the real ultimate and dull presentations where somebody just reads the whole slide out. It's really not fun to go along to, really good thing to avoid. Another reason is that because people may not have thought through their subject enough and decided how to get rid of the unnecessary words and information, and chosen their key messages, because really your slide should just emphasize your key messages. And then another reason why you can end up with too much text is because you haven't thought about how could you use a picture or a graphic that could tell the story very quickly. So to cut your text, as on this slide here, choose your key messages. At most you'll want 3 per slide, ideally about 1 or 2. To get rid of text as well, practice your talk. Don't rely on your slides to give you the words you need. You should be able to do this on your own. And have a look through your slides and think, are all these words useful, or are they just pointless? And if they're pointless, cut them out. Now, PowerPoint gives you a range of whizzy options, and it can be extremely tempting to use some of them, moving things around, jumping things about, hearing bangs and shots. But these things can really distract from your key messages, and you need to use them very carefully. So, some tips for using animations in PowerPoint. Try to restrict them to things you really, really, really want to emphasize. And don't underestimate the power of just underlining something or putting it in bold text if you've got something there. try and use animations constructively. Now some special notes for those of you who are considering using Prezi. The website's there. It's a very good tool. It can be extremely useful for sharing because Prezi's very easy to share, and all you need to do is put them on a public setting and give them to friends. Remember that if you do this, the whole wide world can see them, and this may not be appropriate, particularly when you're working as a health professional wanting to observe confidentiality. Prezis are also very good where you want a kind of overview, so where you might use a brainstorm or a mind map. Prezi is often very good for looking at that sort of thing. Now the special caveats, I guess, for using Prezi, beware of over zooming. Prezi can get really whizzy in and out, and while this can look fine on a computer screen, when you try and present it to a large audience, especially in a darkened room, you can end up with a total kind of motion sickness effect from using Prezi in this way. So please be very careful when you do it. Try it out beforehand in a room with a really big monitor and see whether everyone can still watch it and enjoy it. How many slides should you use for slideshows? Well, you really want to practice your timing speaking really slowly. Deliberately slow yourself right down, because that's probably the kind of speed you should be talking at, particularly in an audience. When you're talking in a big room, you really want to give everybody every chance to hear every word. A common rule of thumb is to try and allot something like 2 minutes for every slide. So if you've got a 1 hour talk, the maximum number of slides you should be using is 30 slides. And for the sort of 10-minute presentations that we expected to do for the faculty challenge, we're looking at about 5 slides. And that can be quite a challenge, bringing down your message to 5 slides. Should you include joke slides? Now, joke slides are fantastic in theory, and they can really improve a talk, and using humour in a talk, you will find that really good presenters always use a bit of humour, and they can get away with things that other people can't. But you really need to think before you put a joke slide in about, are they really funny and could they be offensive? And you really need to sit back and look at those, because sometimes your joke can fall flat and your talk falls flat as well. If you are going to include a few joke slides, just be careful how many you use as well. Sometimes even if they're really good jokes, putting one joke after another can detract from your message. So you need to think about what are your messages. Before you write a talk, try and think of about 3 key messages that you want to convey. For a really long talk, like an hour-long talk, you might want to up that number to about 5. But people aren't going to take on board more than 4 or 5 things in a talk, and realistically you've got about 15-20 minutes to get people hooked on your 3 key messages whenever you're doing a presentation. So for example, if we were to summarize this talk, the first point that I'd like you to remember when you as you take home is that when you're talking to people, you really need to choose your key messages. The second point is that PowerPoint or whatever other slide projector type program you're trying to use should be a backup to your talk. It shouldn't replace your talk. You talking is the interesting bit. And then the next key message is try and remember to talk slowly, and remember that when you're actually presenting, it will almost always take longer than the timings when you practice in the privacy of your own home. So here's some top tips for talking to groups. First, try and tailor your talk to the audience. Think about who your audience is, what they will know and what they won't know, and make sure that you don't try and overestimate what they know. Always work towards the lowest common denominator and the person who knows the least in the room. Be very careful to go slowly, and when you're talking to groups it's very easy, especially when you're nervous, to just race through and your message will often get lost. Try and avoid jargon wherever possible. We as health professionals use a lot of terms that we will recognise and will know, but which other people from other parts of the health profession will not recognise and not understand, and lay people certainly won't understand. So whenever you're talking to an audience, please try and avoid jargon if at all possible. It will make your talk a lot more presentable. Another top tip is to practice not saying and another word that comes up quite a lot these days is like. It can be very, very distracting for somebody trying to listen to a talk to hear a lot of ums and stutters and ahs, and that's quite common when you're nervous. Similarly, using the word this is like and like can get really, really distracting. Try presenting to a friend and seeing if they pick up your use of ums and likes and similar phrases. Next top tip is to make eye contact with your audience. Make sure you look up. Sometimes it can really help to focus on a couple of people in the audience who make eye contact back with you, but that really does allow you to connect with your audience a lot more. Practice your talk. Don't worry about forgetting bits. Sometimes there will be things that you won't remember to say. You can always come back to them during questions. You can use your slides as cues, but really, unless you've got some burningly important points which should be emphasized on your slides, everything else you can probably wing. So don't get too hung up about forgetting something. And then the final tip that I'd give you is please leave some time for questions at the end, because a minute or two for questions can often lead to very interesting discussions, and questions can often be the most interesting bit of a talk.